Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. We have a special in-studio episode today, and again, I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Johanna Richey. Hi, Jo.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you doing?
Oh, it's amazing. Wonderful day.
And we had a wonderful week last week at graduation.
Indeed.
Well, that
Big
kind of is a
days.
nice segue into our guest today, Dr. Maria Love, 2024 graduate of the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine. Welcome to Dean's Chat.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. What's this last week been like for you with graduation?
This last week has been surreal, to put it in one word. Just everything you've worked for your whole life, or the majority of your life, depending on where you're coming from, is coming true, and you get to celebrate that with everyone that was rooting you on, whether lifelong or a couple years, or even your faculty that got to know you for these last 4 years. So surreal and amazing.
We had so much fun at the banquet, and then we'll talk about that a little bit because you won a couple of awards, and then the graduation is kind of like icing on the cake for everybody. Thankfully, we don't do them outdoors in Arizona.
Oh, yeah, thankfully.
Jo, how was last week for you?
Oh, it's such a special time. I mean, graduation brings up so many different emotions, and I think the overarching theme for me was gratitude. It is just incredible to have that opportunity to sit in that room. You feel that excitement, that energy, and you just start to appreciate how far you've come and how different people have shaped your life. And, you know, it gives that opportunity for reflection, and that's beautiful, having those chances to think about all of that. So it's a nice reminder every year.
It is a nice reminder. So what was your favorite part of last week? What was the moment that when you think back about graduation just going to stand out to you?
Probably my mom running out of the auditorium to give me a hug. She was sprinting, and you could just see like the emotions on her face was just beautiful. Just a culmination of everything. She was sprinting.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's a great story. So maybe we rewind the clock a little bit, and we're so appreciative of you coming in right after graduation before you start residency. Do you mind chatting about your experience at the Arizona College?
My experience at the Arizona College was incredible. I think often about how I worked so hard to get the number one choice of school that I wanted to, and that was Midwestern, for the academics, for the location, for my family. And it's wild to think that I made that happen for me. And like going through that experience, it was more amazing than I could have even thought about it. I can't imagine going to a different school and having different faculty. Every faculty member and staff and professor at Midwestern helped shape me throughout the 4 years, even from my pathology teacher and, of course, all the podiatric medicine faculty. It was just amazing.
Oh, that's great. Jo, you graduated from the Arizona College too. Are you having flashbacks?
Oh yeah, completely. And that, again, that's what's fun about having that opportunity every year is you get to reflect about it. And so May can become reflection month for everyone in podiatry. Think about your graduation and all the people that helped get you there.
Definitely. And even going through this last externship experience, it's really great to be able to use everything that you learned. And when a resident or an attending is impressed with you, it just goes back to where you came from, which was Midwestern, the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine, which is huge too.
No, that's great. You know, so often, Maria, we talk to students when they're coming into the college, and there's a lot of free-floating anxiety. You know, am I going to make it? It's hard. Do you remember those days before you started? What were your thoughts?
Oh, I remember those days so clear. I knew I wanted to go into medicine for many years before I finally was admitted to Midwestern. And I did have a lot of anxiety throughout high school when I was first developing. I'm the first physician in my family. I didn't know how to do it, went through undergrad, was able to meet so many advisors and mentors to help me through that. And I also ended up doing a master's program. And throughout that time was a lot of anxiety. I applied to podiatric medicine, and the second that I got my interview, or the second that I got admitted into the university, all of my anxiety was wiped away, which instead of the anxiety beginning, it was the culmination of all my hard work, and I knew what to do to be able to graduate at Midwestern. So that day that I was admitted, my anxiety went away, and I knew I just had to work, but I knew I could do it because I got in. So it's a little bit of the opposite. Anxiety went away that day, and it's just been great.
That is so interesting. I don't hear that perspective very often.
And I think that, again, is a testament to Maria, who's a phenomenal student. And I think one of the things that can be valuable as students are going through this journey is this idea of goal setting and like, I have this thing that I want to do. And so you start to build up anxiety around, am I going to reach this goal? Am I going to be able to do the things that I say? And especially if you start sharing that with other people and ultimately laying that groundwork. And I think where people get into trouble is then as soon as they achieve it, they just kick the goalpost further. And so now it doesn't have that, I did it, like that feeling of accomplishment, but rather, okay, now I have to get to resident. And it's like, take the moment, enjoy what you just spent so much time building, because otherwise you just start to fatigue, right? Nobody can run at 110% all the time. So I think it's great that you were able to take that and celebrate it and ultimately be incredibly successful, which we'll keep talking about.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite quotes, is to look back and be happy about where you are, because younger you would be amazed. And to be able to have joy in all the moments, even in the late nights of studying. You work so hard to be here. You know you can do it. Like, just push a little bit more, but be happy about it because you are where you wanted to be.
Absolutely. Do you mind talking about the first year a little bit? What your experience was? You were confident coming in, but was there an adjustment to the pace and nine-week quarters, things like that?
I was confident, but I was scared. Even though it wasn't anxiety, I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. Everyone said it's like a fire hose, and you're trying to drink, and it's almost impossible. And it did take 2 semesters for me to really feel confident. I tried so many different methods of studying, and the first 2 semesters, I wasn't able to figure it out. I tried everything, didn't know what I needed, and then finally after that second semester, I knew that I had found my study tools and what worked for me, and after that, you just keep repeating those things that worked for you, but it was definitely an adjustment period. I tried everything that every student had suggested to me, and you find out what works and don't do what doesn't work. There's no need to spend time trying to use somebody else's study technique that doesn't work for you. So find what works for yourself.
No, that's a good point. We have 40 students starting again in August. Do you mind just giving them a couple of words of wisdom for being successful, even though I realize studying is an individual thing?
I would say try everything. So try a couple of things for the first exam for each different class. And it may not work that first exam. You might not do very well, and just know to change it up. Second exam, you can see if you went backwards or if you went forwards, and then work from there.
I think that's wonderful advice.
Yeah, that's really, again, it's hard to make blanket statements and brush strokes generally about such diverse opportunities for learning, but certain themes are common, right? And flexibility, being willing to let go of something if it's not working. And sometimes where we get stuck is we get stuck in our way and like, well, this is how I do it. This was what worked in undergrad, but this is a different experience. So being okay with maybe the fear of letting go of the things that don't serve you and trying something new.
Exactly. And I remember talking to my classmates in the beginning. Somebody would say, oh, I did 3,000 Anki cards this last week. I don't remember anything. And I'm like, that doesn't work for you. Maybe try doing the note-taking or the diagrams and figure out what works for you.
Absolutely. Well, moving ahead a little bit, I was going to kind of go in order. Second year, you completed it, and now we have second years, recently turned third, that are about to take boards next month. How'd you find boards preparation? Did you think the curriculum prepared you for boards?
So caveat, second year is the hardest out of all 4 years. You think the first year is the hardest because you don't know what to expect and you're adjusting, but just wait, second year is the hardest. But once you've already developed everything that you need to do, it's using those tools and just a lot more material, but you know what to do and take the time to do so. In terms of boards, Midwestern definitely prepared me for the content. Everything was just a review at that point. I wasn't learning anything additional. I was reviewing everything that I had done that whole year, all the little cheat sheets I had made, as well as taking into account what the third years had said about the boards. But overall, I was confident while I was taking the exam. And then, of course, when you get to the end of the exam, it's normal to feel like you didn't do so good. We are in a career where we think we need to be perfect, but we are human too. We can't get 100% on everything. So it's gonna feel like you didn't do very good or that you could have done better, but that's true because that makes us physicians as well. We're always trying to do a little bit better. What else can we do to be better? So just know that you won't feel the best, but ultimately, Midwestern did prepare you for what you needed to pass that board exam.
It was when you were second year, you went to ACFAS, right?
I went my third year.
Your third year. That's when you two met, correct?
Yeah. So that's if I can tell a story about how Maria and I met. I was actually not a faculty member at Midwestern at the time, and we were sitting in a lecture hall, my colleague and I, listening, and at the end, people can stand up and ask questions, and Maria stood up and introduced herself as a third-year student, and of course, my ears perk up and my head spins around, and she asked a brilliant question, and the moderator answered appropriately, but I was sitting there next to Christy King, and I'm like, we need to go introduce ourselves to her, like we need to go talk to her, and just fell in love with her. I mean, she's just absolutely spectacular, and I don't want to sit and just gush all about how wonderful Maria is, but there are certain students that you meet, and certain people even, that you can just instantly know she's going to be a superstar. She's going to be phenomenal. So
that's a great
And then
story.
now I'm here, and we reconnected again. And
do you remember what question you asked in that forum?
I think, was it the Lake Charles? Was it the sports medicine question?
honestly, I don't even think I remember which one it was. I was just more focused on the fact that a third year felt enough confidence to stand up in a room full of practicing surgeons and ask a well-formed, intelligent question. Like, I wanted to just go tell her, great job, keep it up. And then, of course, we just started talking. And, as I engage with students, if they ask me great questions, I'll just keep talking. So we just talked, I think, for like 25 minutes or something. And I exchanged contact information, and then the rest was history. But
yeah, what a small world.
Right? Yeah.
I don't remember the question, but I know that I always like to ask questions instead of be left wondering. And it's also a good opportunity to meet people. There's a lot of people can teach us things in this world. And if I hadn't asked that question, which we don't remember, I wouldn't have introduced myself to her. And ultimately, I was able to ask the question that I needed to ask in order to go to externship. So it worked out.
That's fabulous. When I think of you or your time here at Midwestern, I don't really think about the grades and the courses. I think about all the extracurricular work that you were involved with, whether there was clubs, whether it was going to meetings. I remember one time, didn't we go out for Italian food with Dr. Lucido?
Yes.
He came to talk about sports medicine from Miami. Can you, two questions for you. The first is, we don't want students to be so involved in extracurricular activities that they forget that they're here to do the schoolwork. When did you feel comfortable getting more involved in activities, and what activities were those?
Oh, thank you. So I remember you stressing that first year, and I knew I really wanted to get out there, but I knew that you know exactly what you're doing and you know how to guide us. So
that the first part's a stretch, but we'll go with it.
So I listened to you the first and second semesters, and that first semester was very difficult for me. That second semester, I was able to know a little bit more about how to study and how to be successful in school. And third semester rolls around, I did the same thing. And by fourth semester, spring, I knew I was confident and wanted to start participating in things. And that was And I remember vividly, it was doing sports annual physicals for the Milwaukee Brewers. I knew I wanted to do it. And I knew it was only a couple of days work. So that was kind of my first, let's try to see what we could do besides school. And that's when I knew I could figure out how to balance everything. But I did wait till the spring of first year to actually know that how to be successful in school.
So doing professional sports team physical sounds like a great opportunity.
It was, yeah. And then I did it. So it was minor league that first year. And then the second year I did major and minor league sports annual physicals. And we just have such a good hub for spring training, as everyone knows. So I took advantage of it.
No, that's fantastic. What other extracurricular activities did you participate in that really made a difference for you in terms of giving you experience or clerkship opportunities or potentially even helping you get a residency program?
So at the end of that first year, I got involved with the Junior League of Phoenix. It's a women's charity organization, and I was in the Kids in the Kitchen group. I got my bachelor's in nutrition, so that's kind of where it fit in. And we went to it's called Homeward Bound, where it's housing. Meanwhile, mothers and children find a more permanent solution. So I was able to go there and arrange teaching the kids how to eat healthy and the moms as well, which was very rewarding to play with the children at the home too. And I also got involved with our indoor football league, professional here in Phoenix that first year, and I've done it ever since. And I continued with cord blood advocacy, so umbilical cord blood advocacy with Save the Cord Foundation. And that second year is where I signed up to be the president of the sports medicine club and did a lot with that too. Rock and Roll Marathon in Phoenix and San Diego, as well as the Runner's Den, and was able to network and get a lot of physicians to come speak to us, to teach us about how to get to where they wanted to go and how to get to what we want to do in sports medicine too. And just networking is huge.
Absolutely. So I know that once you're done with boards, the clerkship experience comes fast, and you got a lot of advice from Dr. Richey in terms of clerkships. Can you talk about that at all?
Definitely. So choosing clerkships is not easy. You're thinking about, where am I going to spend the next 3 years of residency? But also, where do you want to break your comfort zone as well? I went in it with not just choosing 8 programs that made me comfortable. I chose a couple that took me out of my comfort zone. I went all the way to the East Coast, which I am an Arizona local, weather, city life. And so that was one of the places that was out of my comfort zone. And then I went to Florida. I had never been to Florida before one of a podiatry school application. So that was out of my comfort zone too. I went to Nashville, Tennessee, also had never been there. And Northern California, also had never been there, but also chose comfort programs that I knew had a strong desire to check out and see if I wanted to attend locally and nearby states. So first was the location for me, choosing a couple that were comfortable and then a couple that were out of my comfort zone, and then was choosing academics. So breaking that down into academics, where I saw myself succeeding there, but also pushing myself academically, and that had a good reputation as well to see if that was what was worth it to me. And once you get to academics, you want to see about life there as well. Will you be able to be happy in that city for 3 years? If you have a family, will they be able to be happy for 3 years? Will your parents be able to visit you if that's what's important to you? Or will you be able to visit your parents with your crazy residency schedule? So there's a lot of those different things to think about. And that's kind of how I made my list and ultimately chose those 8, but also make sure you don't get disappointed by choosing one that doesn't match that month that you wanted to go. because it is an algorithm, and it's not that they didn't want you, it's that they had those spots already filled. So you also have to think about that.
No, I think that's some really good advice, because you can't obviously be offered 3 great programs for the same month. You can only be in one place at one time. So it's a challenge.
Exactly, it's a challenge. And so you'll get those 3, and you'll have to break someone's heart too by choosing what you want that month. And I remember vividly, are you gonna, between 2 impressive programs, which one are you gonna choose? Yeah. And that's your life right there.
Your thoughts, Joe?
I think it's such a hard thing too when you don't know what you don't know. And so you're in this, you just finished second year, you just finished your boards, you're super excited. But even just trying to wrap your head around, how do I decide between these 2 programs that look great on paper? And that's what is so useful about an externship, is it's a month-long experience where, as much as you are wanting to impress a program, the program's also interested in kind of impressing you. And I mean, not in the sense of, they have to like sell you on a program, but they want a match just as much as you want a match. And so having that opportunity to weigh 2 programs that you've spent a month at, that is the next decision. But how do you make those decisions when it's just looking at paper? And so I think what you had highlighted about, where, and I love that you were willing to kind of go out of your comfort zone. I think what's hard for a lot of us is we get complacent, or it's scary, and we don't want to maybe, like, I'm willing to push myself, but I don't want to push it and be uncomfortable at the same time. So being willing to kind of have that stretch goal and say, okay, these are the ones that I feel comfortable location, and then I'm going to stretch. I've never been to Tennessee. I've never been to Florida. Who knows? Maybe I'll love it, right? You don't know until you go. And Paul Kim, that was one of, when I sat in his office and I was like, how do I even figure this out? And I had based originally some of my decisions on purely geographic things. And he was like, you need to know what you're giving up, even if you don't go there. And it was such great advice, because at first I was like, but these are all great programs. It's not like I'm sacrificing something. But his point of, you don't know what you don't know. And so you don't know what you're willing to give up until, and he was totally right. One of the areas I had not actually had in my map was one of my favorite parts of the country that I end up spending a lot of time in. So, it's interesting as you look back why you make certain decisions. But I think having that willingness to be a little uncomfortable, but build your guardrails around safety nets. So if you're willing to talk about then how you translated some of those decisions into residency decision making, because figuring out your externships is one thing, but then having to figure out, okay, I had a lot of really amazing experiences, and as an excellent student, you shine. And so you have, and every great student always says, but you don't know that. Like, you weren't there. I don't know if I got the program. And you're right, we don't, right? But common things being common, excellent students excel typically in their externships. And so then really the decision, because the match is in your favor as a student, how did you kind of look at some of those decision making in terms of where do you want to go, and how does that look like?
So overall, to piggyback off what you said, it turns out that I loved some of the programs that I didn't know I would love, for the people, for what opportunities I had there and saw there, as well as the location. I think last year was imperative, not just for me as a student, not for me as a physician, but overall just a human being too, getting to explore different parts of the country. And in terms of match, it's really hard. There's some programs that you like the exact same, and you know that they also liked you the exact same. Sometimes you just know you vibe with the residents, you vibe with the program, you have a good time, and you just know too. So choosing 2 programs that I liked equally, ultimately you have to choose your support system. When you get home after a long day at the hospital or after working those 80 hours a week, what do you want? What do you need? Do you need an empty house, Or do you need your husband and your baby? Or do you need your dogs? What do you need? Or do you need your parents? So choosing what you need after those 80 hour a week to be able to be a happy human being. And everyone's different. So what do you need at the end of the day?
Words of wisdom.
Yeah, well said.
I have a question for you. We're already counseling third-year students. They're going to pick their clerkships in September. It's only June. I'm already getting questions about, we get 2 opportunities to do clerkships in the end of the third year, in March, April, or May, and of course they roll into the beginning of the academic calendar. They're afraid to do the programs they really want too early because they don't think they know enough. By the same token, they don't want to do them too late. So did you find, I'm asking for recommendations for future students. I always tell them it doesn't matter, but what's your thoughts on doing a clerkship in April versus doing it in October?
I would say that if you really want to go to some specific programs based on location, based on residents there, and just reputation, choose them August, September, October. I would say that because you are so much better as a student in September than you were in March.
That's absolutely true.
So how much better do you want to be in September? And I knew and I ended up doing very well during that first externship, even though it was very challenging. I know I ended up doing very well and got an interview there, and it showed how I was prepared, but I felt more comfortable in myself and in my skills and in my knowledge August, September, October, and that's also important, how confident you are in yourself.
That's a good point.
But if you end up liking that March, April, May program, don't be disappointed because you can still match there.
Absolutely. A lot of the programs realize you're still a third-year student. They don't expect you to be quite as knowledgeable as you would be 6 months after that period.
And you might be stellar as a March student compared to a December student, and that just shows to who you are and to what the program wants as well.
Absolutely. So can you talk about where you matched and how excited you are and what you're looking forward to? Yeah,
so I matched here in Phoenix at the Creighton University School of Medicine, which is affiliated with Valleywise Hospital. And I'm so excited. That was my number one choice. I wanted to stay local. I love Phoenix, and I know I want to stay in Phoenix and build a life in Phoenix. So ultimately, that's what helped me choose. But the residents there are incredible. All of the outside attendings we work with are incredible. And I know that whatever I put into it, I will get out of a residency program. And that also helped me too. I know I will work so hard to be successful. And if anything, there's fellowships in the future and you can get whatever you want out of a residency program. So very excited for that.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. But it is very hard, and ask the hard questions to your faculty. I know Dr. Richey was immensely wise for everything that I needed. Even so, when we met in ACFAS, I had to ask a difficult question as to how to go into externships as a female with a baby and a family, and ultimately share whatever you need to share at the residency program that you go to in order to be successful and get what you need, because the residency program will choose you as a human and know everything. And your life is what makes you human, and they'll choose you for you.
Yeah, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity that there's a lot of unspoken things, and being a female in medicine has its own unique challenges just by virtue of there's a period of time that your body is capable of doing certain things, and people don't really talk about it. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a taboo topic, like, oh, don't bring it up. However, people don't bring it up. And so again, the fact that you were willing to be vulnerable and that I was willing to be vulnerable back, and we just deep dived, which again, I'm always willing to do with students, but having that willingness to ask those uncomfortable questions, those hard questions, because it's hard to know how to navigate certain things until you can have someone that maybe navigated it. And I did not have a baby during school or residency, but having had children as a faculty and just having those experiences, and then having had gone through being a student and how to like look at those things, and being a residency attending and realizing, where would be places to have, certain conversations and where you want to be delicate with things, having people to reach out to and ask those things. Don't be afraid. And that's where, again, I just give you such huge props for just being willing to ask. And people want to share experiences. They want to have conversations with students. But we're not going to bring up awkward topics if students don't specifically ask. Or I wouldn't have even known had you not asked those questions.
Right.
So, and for our male colleagues, the same thing. We had a couple of residents that had children during residency. And it's hard to be a father and go through being a resident, but it is a completely different experience to be a mother and go through these experiences. And I think one of the other things that you touched on that I would like to kind of just revisit and highlight is you had talked about like what you need, like going through the work to figure out, what do I need? And it's hard because we don't always want to maybe accept what we need, or we don't really want to do the deep dive, because to have gotten to this point, we have self-selected into the group of type A, overachieving, success addiction type people, right? Like we all want to be the very best at what we do. And so you just keep chasing those next things. But it is important to remember that you are a whole human, and that there are people in your life that maybe you're bringing with you on this journey that really matter. And they are going to really matter in terms of your experience as a resident as well. And so as easy as it is to stay very tunnel vision on residency and what that experience looks like, it is important, as we talked about recently with another guest on a podcast, what those trade-offs could also be, and that intentionality around that trade-off. It's not that there is one right answer. There are so many people with hundreds of answers. So having to figure out, what is it that for me really matters the most? What is the trade-off I'm not willing to have? And then how do I build my life to support those things? And there are lots of ways to do that. And it doesn't mean you're sacrificing. And that, I think, is the other thing. Sometimes we put these labels on, like, well, I don't want to sacrifice, not getting the best training by doing something else. And that's not at all what it is. It's a matter of looking at, okay, how do I make these two things happen simultaneously? And what is the environment that is going to help support me to do these things? And those are hard questions. And so I just really commend you on being willing to ask the questions in the first place, to do the work to get to the answers, and then have an amazing opportunity as your next step. Because again, I'm just really excited to see you continue to thrive. And I wanted to, one other question I wanted to kind of circle back, because you had talked about, you had known that you had done really well on a couple of different programs, and you won't really know how to be an excellent student until you're a resident and you work with students that maybe are less than excellent. Then you'll really know. But if you could comment for the audience, maybe about some of the things that you kind of picked up, these are really good ways to shine, or things to do to really do well and be successful on externships.
So beautifully said. So the number one thing I would say is be teachable. If you do something that one program, so also many programs will do things differently, but if you're at one program and they say, oh, this is how we do it here, be teachable. Do it their way the entire month. And even if you did it wrong that first time, being teachable is huge. Next, I would say be prepared for your cases. Know how to do the case. You will be asked questions. Know the anatomy. You will be asked questions. But if you show up and you don't know the next steps in that case, you will be looked at very funny. Let's just say that much. And then third, I would say if you don't know the answer to the question you were asked, look it up that night. You may not be asked again, and you might be ready the whole month to say that answer, but know that you know it, and you may be asked the next day or the week after, hey, what was that question? And keep a bank of all of your questions. It's really good to review it in the next coming months or for that one program that you really like, and for boards as well. So those are a couple of my big tidbits, and as well as all the other little things that they tell you, time-wise, professional, but those be teachable. That is huge.
And then do really well at all the things that take no talent. Like you said, being on time. Being on time isn't really on time. It's being early, things like that. Because you don't know where you're at. Sometimes you go into a new month, you don't know where the locker room is. You don't know where to check in. I mean, there's a lot of free-floating anxiety just organizationally.
You will most likely not know what's going on the first couple of days, and that's just part of the game. It's not just you. You and all the other students don't know what's going on in the beginning of the month. And then one other thing I just thought about is know what to expect next. Know what to prepare for the case in terms of the room, tourniquet, x-rays, local anesthesia, all of those basic stuff. Don't just go into the operating room and sit there. Don't be in the lounge drinking your coffee. Prepare the room, and then you can take the time that you need before the case starts. But know how to expect little things like that. That's how you will stand out as well.
There's nothing worse as an attending than watching your resident running around and the student is hanging out, having a chat, or drinking a cup of coffee. And again, we don't have to necessarily say anything, but that is absolutely, like, we all see it. The resident will make comments when we go through and judge students about, where do we want to rank them. The student wasn't very helpful. They were smart, but they weren't very helpful. They didn't come prepared. They didn't know what the next steps were. They didn't have something in their hand ready to hand off. So I think those are excellent points.
And if the first couple of days you don't really know what's going on in that hospital, you can wait 1-2 days, but be on top of your game after that. If you really like the program, if you want to stand out. And also, even if you don't see yourself as going in that program, the connections you make are imperative, whether if you want to move to that city in the future, you never know. If you, they may know somebody that is hiring you in 10 years, and you might be able to call them and they can give you a good recommendation. So everyone's always watching, and if they're not, you go out of your way to make that connection, because connections, I've learned, are a lot. And I've spoken to a lot of attendings for the programs that were on the top of my list and made some really nice connections. And this is a small world, surprisingly, even though it may seem huge as a first-year student.
It is a small world. So we have a lot of students that are interested in the Creighton program. How can they get a hold of you and maybe even come down and visit your program on the south side of town?
Definitely. Well, we can add my email to the YouTube, right?
Absolutely.
I'll
We'll
add
put in the show notes. Yeah.
What do you like to? What should I give? What do you like to?
It's your preference.
Okay. Well, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Dr. Love XOXO, and
that's fantastic.
So it has a story. I first started it with Miss Love, went to Mrs. Love when I got married, and I knew I always wanted to make it Dr. Love. So the handle has followed me throughout my life.
That's awesome.
Love that.
Just hold a little close piece of my heart. And one other thing that, to piggyback off what you said, it's really good to read the room and never be afraid to ask for people for questions and be vulnerable. They might be vulnerable back, and you might create a beautiful friendship. Even if you're a student and they're an attending, you never know what's going to happen. And also the residents will be vulnerable to you after they hear your story too. So you will end up at the residency program that is meant for you. And just know you got to work hard to get there.
Absolutely. Joe, any last words?
No, I would say if you can end with some advice for prospective students that are contemplating a career. I know you don't have an official doctoral career yet, but if you could give some advice in terms of looking at that, what would you say?
If you see anybody that has what you want in terms of career, networking, business, anything, talk to them. Just go up, talk to them, introduce yourself to them, ask them about themselves, ask them how they got there, because they are your best resource to get there. And we all have goals. We just need to know how to go and accomplish them. So don't be afraid to talk to people, especially people that emulate one of your goals, and they can give you very wise words.
That's beautiful.
That is great. Maria, congratulations on a wonderful academic career at the Arizona College. Congratulations on your new role as a resident at Creighton. I can speak for all the faculty that we're super proud of you and look forward to following your career.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everything at Midwestern.
You are so welcome. Well, thank you all for joining us on this wonderful episode of Dean's Chat. I appreciate, and Joe and I both appreciate, Dr. Maria Love joining us today. And if you're watching on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, please become a subscriber. So Maria, I've got a cup for you, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Until next episode, bye-bye, everybody. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.